You know that part in Casablanca when the girl asks Rick what sort of man Captain Renault is, and Rick answers, like any other man, only more so. Well, that's kind of what I think about this Jane Eyre. It has everything that you would expect from a Jane Eyre adaptation, only more so. The casting. This has like the most classic casting of supporting roles, first of all. Okay, the guy who plays Brocklehurst. Scary, isn't he? Mrs. Reed, I like her for some reason. You oppress me and get away from me. I really liked this Helen. This Helen was more mature. She definitely seemed several years older than Jane. And when she talked about forgiveness and you need to imitate Christ in humility, it seemed natural coming out of her, probably because she was so mature and she was being the reserved, I would prefer to read this book instead of talking to you person that Bronte depicted in the book. As far as the main characters are concerned, this is like the best of both worlds, I guess. Zelah Clarke does an awesome job as Jane, and it's really hard to be able to carry this whole movie for 6 hours or whatever it is, but she succeeds. She is the most dynamic Jane that we have seen thus far. She is not a beauty or anything, but there is a cuteness about her, and she's very enthusiastic, and she's got the rebellion and the independent spirit and this kind of sauciness. Jane Eyre shouldn't be an exciting character. She's not a hyper person, certainly, but if you read her words and her feelings, she is a passionate person, and it just doesn't work to have people in your film saying like, Jane, you have too much passion and you need to quell all these feelings, and it doesn't work if Jane doesn't exhibit those feelings. I feel like Zelah Clarke finally is the one that tapped into all of those feelings that Jane encapsulates. All of those things that makes young women like me actually love this character like she's a real person and be like, oh yeah, she's awesome. It's a shame, but after this was made, after it came out, Zelah Clarke didn't really get anything. She got praise for the role, but that was the end of her career, basically. She made a few TV things, and then she's like, okay, I guess we're not going on from here. And it's such a shame, because she was really good. This is kind of the thing that launched Timothy Dalton into stardom. And he became James Bond from, I don't know if it was directly related to this, but this put him, like, into people's minds. And, yeah, he's still doing stuff today. He does an awesome job as Rochester. His diction is almost too good sometimes. And I always remember the way he says poignant. She has just come out of her room and she falls across him. And Mom raised her eyebrow at that, but I was like, I'm pretty sure that is canon. That happens in the book. And then she made fun of me for using the word canon. But he says nothing bitter, nothing poignant, but the way he says it, it's like nothing poignant. He rolls his R's like crazy. Like the crater crust will crack. He's talking about Blanche to Jane and saying she's a rare one, and he calls her a strapper, which is weird in any adaptation. A real strapper. I couldn't figure out how tall she was, but she is really short, and you can tell in scenes she has with other people, like the other teachers at the school. But then when Rochester comes in, Timothy Dalton is 6'2". I have looked this up. So he just like towers over her, and they just look so cute. It's like this. Here's Jane, and here's Rochester, and so, she's all like do, and he's storming around, and when they hug, it's like this little person is getting squashed in there. There's this one part where he is embracing her, and like his hand is like the size of her head, and he's cradling her top knot, I don't know, and like her hair gets all pulled forward into her face, and so when he pulls away, like, her face is all covered in her hair because it's totally messed up her hair, which probably took her a good 20 minutes to do in the morning. It seems unscripted because he pulls away and he's all like, oh, and then they laugh. It is so cute. You're just like, aw. Another thing about the casting is that a lot of the Rochesters and Janes, they're just too attractive. It's supposed to be people who are attracted to each other by the meeting of their minds and by like interests and like sentiments and each person wanting to better the other. And in the course of that relationship developing, there is also a physical thing that comes in. And it just doesn't work for me when one or both parties are already attractive. And I think that it's important for the viewer to also be pulled into that thing. She really grows on you and takes on this really charming and cute and likable personality. Her face is very expressive. She is an active, engaged Jane. And obviously a lot of people think that Timothy Dalton is attractive. He played James Bond. And my mom says she always thought he was good looking. I personally don't. But I think that he's just wild and a certain type enough that I believe it when he says, "You study me, Miss Eyre. Do you find me handsome?" And she says, "No." I believe it in this case. And it's like, oh, thank goodness. I get really tired of being like, yeah, right. It's one thing that it's got so much stuff, like the best gypsy scene in all of Jane Eyre adaptation land, and everything is so close to the book. But there's also these other things that are so cute and so charming. They take their time with things, and I so appreciate that. I am glad it is long enough so that second conversation, I've seen this conversation played out where it's so fast that you're just like, I'm not even sure what anybody's talking about anymore. This doesn't make any sense. And yes, it's supposed to be confusing because he says to her, "I'm puzzling you because I talk like a sphinx." Yeah, we're all a little puzzled, but we should be able to follow along the conversation a little bit. So this takes the time to kind of flesh things out, take things a little bit more at a real-time pace, so that you're not like, well, I have no idea what's going on in this scene, so I'm just gonna mentally check out and, eat my chips and wait until the conversation's over. It's the most vocal Lowood school I have ever seen. All these girls, they're like whispering and giggling and running around and chattering to each other, and it was really different. But it was another thing that made this adaptation just seem more vibrant. I think that's the... Yes, it's very stagey in internal scenes a lot. But it's 83 and it's the BBC, so you can't demand too much. But they did what they could to make it have a certain vibrancy that just really engaged me. I must have seen this version 3 times now. I always enjoy it. You really get every piece of the puzzle. Sure, some of the adaptations yet to come are more daring and more snappy, but this is about as close to the book, I think, as you will get, and still be an entertaining piece of television.